Both. We're going to continue this conversation now with Washington Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. He is the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee, the perfect person to continue this conversation with, Congressman. I want to first start with the U.S. position going into these talks with Zelensky today and the push to end the war. You are the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. You're someone that should be plugged in on this. From your perspective, what is the U.S. posture right now when it comes to these negotiations?
Well, right now, that posture is one of weakness. I mean, we're telling Putin what we're going to give up, and we're not telling him what we're going to stand for. Look, a negotiated settlement is where we need to get to. No question about it. But where are the words from the president or the vice president or anyone that says a cornerstone of any agreement has to be security guarantees for Ukraine? Because you know what Putin wants? Putin wants Ukraine to basically disarm, and then he'll promise not to go any further. Well, we can't take his word on that. We need to make a commitment for the long-term security of Ukraine. It's the only thing that's going to force Putin to the table. Nobody in the Trump administration has been willing to say that. They've been willing to talk about everything that Ukraine should give up. And by the way, a second point we should make, whatever the facts on the ground are, we cannot legitimize Russia taking sovereign territory of Ukraine by force. If you want to say we're not going to be able to push you out, fine, but it will not be recognized as Russian territory, whatever the negotiation is. So all I see from Trump and Vance is weakness in the face of Putin, who is sure to take advantage of that and continue to prosecute the war while he thinks it's going his way.
Yeah, so it seems as though you think Russia has the upper hand. By extension, do you feel as though Ukraine and President Zelensky have found themselves backed into a corner right now?
They're getting close to it. I mean, fortunately, Trump has not, as far as we know, put this deal on the table or made negotiations with Putin. But the way the language is headed right now, it does put Zelensky in a corner. And the other thing to be real concerned about, military leaders have been telling me for a long time, as part of this negotiation, Putin is going to want concessions from NATO and the U.S. as well. President Trump has mused about reducing the defense budget. You know, he has more than once mused about whether or not to stay in NATO. We also have to make it clear that whatever the negotiation in Ukraine, NATO is stay in NATO. We do not trust Putin. If you're Poland, if you're any one of the Baltics, you want security guarantees to be ironclad as well. If we show that strength, you know, Ukraine has done a remarkable job of defending itself. Frankly, we in the 54-nation alliance that President Biden, Secretary Austin, and others put together have done a remarkable job of holding Putin at bay. Let's force him to the table. Let's not say we're going to back down as our opening gambit.
It's interesting you make that point, that there is this 54-nation coalition that has basically served as the backstop for Ukraine. Does it feel right now, as these negotiations at least get to the starting point, they're not quite there yet, that the U.S. is acting like a neutral party, not necessarily a direct ally of Ukraine?
Well, certainly the things that Trump and Vance and others are saying is undermining our coalition. OK, whether you want to say we're acting like a neutral party all of a sudden, I don't know. But they're clearly undermining the coalition by not standing up for the basic principles of what we're there for. I mean, we're there to protect a sovereign democratic Ukraine and to make sure they're strong enough to do that. So having abandoned those principles in many of the comments that have been made, yes, that undermines the coalition. And again, you know, it disincentivizes Putin from coming to the table.
Let's talk about the Secretary of Defense's role in all of this, Pete Hegseth. I'm sure you saw the comments by Senator Roger Wicker, who's the chair of the Armed Services Committee on the Senate side. You're the ranking member in the House. He said that he made a rookie mistake by taking Ukraine's goals off the table. Do you think that Hegseth hurt America on a global stage this week?
Well, yes, but I disagree with Roger on this one, because I don't know that what Hegseth said was that much more inconsistent than what Trump or Vance said. So, I mean, I wish it was just a rookie mistake. I wish it wasn't the direction that Trump wanted to go in. But have you seen anything from Trump or Vance that really contradicts what Hegseth has been saying? So I'm worried that Secretary Hegseth didn't make a rookie mistake. He was just, you know, playing it the way the boss back in the White House wanted it to be played. And that's what we need to correct.
I want to try and ask you this as bluntly as I possibly can. Is the possibility that Ukraine's security can't possibly be guaranteed without an American or NATO commitment, is that only on the table right now because Trump won Is the idea that there is no guarantee that Ukraine will be protected in this process only because Trump won the election?
100%. I mean, he campaigned on it. Trump said it repeatedly in a variety of different ways that undermined support for Ukraine. And look, you know, the security guarantee doesn't necessarily have to be NATO, but you certainly don't need to take that off the table before the negotiations start. And again, what I really want to hear from somebody high up in the Trump administration is any peace negotiation has to guarantee Ukraine's security going forward. Give them security guarantees from the U.S., from NATO partners, you know, for training, equipment, basically give them the strength to be able to stand up against Putin going forward. That has to be a bedrock principle to go into a negotiation with Putin.
And then finally, President Trump floating the idea of inviting Russia back into the G7. Their exit from the G7 even predates this latest conflict. It came after their initial invasion into Crimea. Would there be any support for that in Congress?
Well, any is hard to say, but no, calling that premature is the understatement, you know, of this interview. I mean, look, maybe some point in the future, would it be great to have, you know, Russia back as part of the community of nations? Sure, but to offer that now would be ridiculous considering where they are at and what they've been doing. So I think that's getting way ahead of where we're at right now.
All right, Congressman Adam Smith, certainly a very important day to have you on to talk about these important topics. We appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.